Okay, welcome everybody to the special meeting of All Souls. And we've asked Herb Mones, who's been leading up the accessibility project. And Herb can share his background and what he's done and so forth, but he is reporting to the congregation on behalf of the Bishops Committee. So the Bishops Committee has reviewed all the work that he has done. And this is Herb's presentation, and it's Herb's presentation which reflects the consensus of the Bishops Committee in terms of a path forward. So we said that the meeting would be available to people virtually, and we thank Lynn for logging in. So we do have one at least virtual person. Also, bear in mind, this shouldn't inhibit what you might have to say, but the session is being recorded as well. So we want to make sure that every voice is heard and that everyone knows what's going on. So we'll have a recording of this as well, which would be available to people. So with that, and we're going to do a quick little test, Lynn, I'm going to turn it over to Herb, and just to make sure that you give him some feedback on whether you can hear him when he talks. Herb? Can you hear him?
Yes, fine, thank you.
You got it. Oh, you want the slides? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, I'll get them. Just give me a second. I'm multitasking here. Share screen. Share screen. And there we are.
All right, we're ready to get started again. Thank you for those attending both physically and virtually on this report. Over the past several months, really since December, the Bishops Committee, along with some of my reflections, have been compiling a report to give to the congregation. So hopefully at the end of this presentation, you all have an understanding of what we've been doing since really last December, how we got to this particular point now, and what the Bishops Committee recommendations are of moving forward. And then get a chance, because everybody's gathered here, to get some feedback if we are going in the right direction or we're going in the wrong direction before we take any further steps. So the idea here is, again, twofold: where we've been and where we should be going. This works. Okay, here we go. So with the accessibility project, we're going to take some steps. We'll show you the steps that have been enacted and some of the directions that we're going in. I think we have to start first off by thanking everybody in the past that's worked on the accessibility project, on the raising the funds to bring us to this point. Certainly not an easy task in organizing and executing to the purpose of raising that amount of money. So I think the congregation needs to be congratulated on a very ambitious goal that way. Again, here we are. If you think back to December, the congregation had two town hall meetings, one in person and one virtually, to get a sense of where everybody felt we should go in regards to a bathroom and a lift system. So in that process, we compiled a number of different ideas. I tried to distill it down to a couple of simple points of what we gained from all of the insights that the congregation gave. And essentially it was, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let me rephrase this. Last month, the Bishops Committee discussed 4 aspects of the accessibility project based on everything that we did. And what we discussed was, what's the preferable bathroom option? If we only had a limited amount of funds, what direction should we go in? Should it be on the lift project or the bathroom project? Also, should we do and start planning both projects at the same time if we have a limited amount of funds? Or if we have a limited amount of funds, just concentrate on one thing only. And then lastly, would it be appropriate to ask the diocese to match the funds that we have? So the Bishops Committee came together and we made a determination on those questions. And we're going to kind of reveal what we found and then get the congregation's opinions on that. So the report has several different aspects to it. You'll see them as we go on. Again, I'm going back to the background of the town hall meetings. At the town hall meetings in December, there was a consensus by the congregation that the accessibility to the church is more important than the bathroom. That was the feeling by the wide majority of people. Most people preferred a separate bathroom. People felt that to preserve the church was very important. There should be an accessibility that everybody could kind of have an equal amount of use on. We should work with experts. We should explore purchasing property, and we should get the project started as quickly as we could. In December, we did approach the Ward Melville Heritage Organization. They were not receptive for us buying, leasing, gaining an easement, or in any way accessing property for the project. So that was shut down, even though we pursued a number of different avenues. They were not receptive in any way. So as a result, it left us with working within the parameters of only our property that we have and moving forward that way. And again, if you have any questions, just ask. And helping us with this project in December, when I realized that we would not have access to the back of the property or to the side of the property, I called John Kniff, a local architect, to talk about lift systems. And John Kniff, he was enthusiastic about getting involved in the project. I didn't ask him about getting involved in the accessibility project. I asked him about a lift system, but he wanted to be involved. So he has been my go-to person of gaining information. So when you have a question, I generally don't know the answer. I go to John Kniff and ask him from his experience what he knows about the subject. And just as background, John Kniff is the lead architect in the community. Most people recognize that. He's the go-to person. He's working on the Gamecock Cottage. He's working at the Stony Brook Community Church up the road. I'll show you a picture of that. He's doing the restoration of the Red Schoolhouse building. He's designed already the outdoor cafe at the Emma Clark Library, and he's involved in a whole bunch of other projects. So, he's a person that has a lot of credibility in what he has. So when you drive past the schoolhouse building on 25A, that's one of his projects. If you go to the Emma Clark Library, there's now an eating area they built out on the church. There's a handsome photograph of a number of people at the Gamecock Cottage. That was about 2 weeks ago, reviewing the plans that were there. John Kniff is on the right, surveying. This was like a publicity photo. They invited me for some reason. I don't know why I was there, but whatever else, I was there. Right, I'm trying to.
The question, which we'll ask later, who's in the paper, pictures in the paper more, Herb Mones or John Conway?
And then the community church, if you remember, that little building used to be the op shop, thrift shop. They're now going to convert that into a little meeting hall. Much like we have here, that's going to be the place that they'll go after services. So I only give you that information because often I'll say in this presentation, in answer to a question, John Kniff says, and you'll understand that it's based upon an architect's experience of working in the town and how he feels about that. I'm going to go right away into the aspects of the report so that we're only going to spend maybe the next 10 minutes looking about the foundations of the bathroom and the lift system. That'll open up the questions and comments, and we can look at our next steps from there. In the bathroom, the committee, the Vigilance Committee, we really looked at 4 options that were presented to us by the congregants. An interior bathroom using the sacristan, in the words right, a standalone building outside of the church, an annex that would be attached to the church, and a portable bathroom, like a trailer that can be brought onto the property that way. The interior fit out option to do the project would be about $16,000 to take that area and make it into a bathroom. The septic system on any of these projects would be about $40,000, $35,000, $40,000 more. So you just gotta kind of consider it when you're building that project out. An interior bathroom, largely, people have grave reservations about doing that. The idea that the sanctuary of the church would be somehow violated, the noise that possibly could come from the bathroom, the awkwardness of it, the loss of space, that way. But certainly doing an interior bathroom is the simplest and the least expensive of all the options that the Bishop Committee would look at. A standalone option would be one in which it would be a little bit larger in space. It would be outside of the church. It would be a little bit more expensive building an outside structure that could be used. And it would also require a number of masonry work along with the septic system. So I'll give you a total price on that in a second. Again, a standalone option would be one in which we would never have to worry about noise, smell, asking people not to use the facility during church services, and things like that. It would have a number of different advantages that way. Though it would be more costly to build, and it presents some problems of maintaining it because it's not attached or part of the church. But it would be located somewhere in the corner of the church property. John Kniff did a little floating picture here.
The red box would be where it would be.
The red box is where it would be, right here. Here's the church. So it would be off into this corner. So it would look like, it would be something like that. And then the next one is the bathroom annex option. And an annex would be where we would build out on the back portion of the church, side portion of the church. This really was something that was thought of and presented as we went through the process and got quite a long way along by both John Kniff and Steve Velasquez. They kind of, there was almost like a synergy that occurred that on the same day, they both approached me and say, why don't we consider this option? And I said, have you guys been talking? And they said, no. But it was one in which it would envision a small structure, and that would satisfy the idea that it would be able to utilize the electric, the plumbing, facilities of the church, but not gobble up the sanctuary in any way, sacrosanct. So it would be another idea. And we have a little bit of a cost of that, not much different than a standalone in every way. Steve Velasquez did this little drawing, which illustrates where it would be in the back corner of the church. And it illustrates a little bit of an idea, get a little bit ahead of myself, but if the lift system were to come up to this point, people would be able to then move along a ramp and go into the church this way, or move along this way and use the bathroom there. So it presents that opportunity to us. So it would be tucked away or parked somewhere in that area of the church. The annex has a number of different pros. It eases a lot of concerns, though the Bishops Committee said if that's the option that's followed, we would want to have extra amount of soundproofing, exhaust fan, everything else to mitigate any problem that it would present to the interior of the church that way. Again, it is a little bit more costly, and it does violate a little bit of the impact of it violates a little bit of the architectural integrity of the church, because you're building onto the back of the church. Though the side, the side of the church. We don't have enough room in the back of the church to do that. So, yeah. There would only be access from the outside. The idea, though, is that some people would feel as a con, a negative, is that it is touching the church or violating the architectural integrity of the church. So we throw it out there. whatever option we do, the interior, the standalone, or the annex, there would be a number of course that would be associated with it. The architectural, the cost of design, engineering fees, navigating the different variances. So the bottom line, again, these are napkin figures drawn out, but they give you kind of an understanding of where we're at. Is that if we went with the interior option, about $63,000. The standalone option, about $92,000, $93,000, and the same thing with the annex option. So I think that getting those figures, compiling the figures, gives us an understanding of what our fundraising goals need to be. Whereas before, when we started the project, we really didn't have any ideas of what the cost would be in doing a project like this. But at least it gives us some foundations of the money that we would need. And I always say that when we get a figure in, it's always likely that the amount of monies does expand, especially the longer you take to build out. So of course, never seem to decline. Yep.
With the annex option, do we need permission from anybody because it's a landmark structure?
Yeah, I'm going to
Who
go
do
over
we-
that.
Oh, you will.
I'm
Okay,
going to
sure.
go over that in a second. I'll show you that. There's also was a suggested affordable restroom option. Some people would compare it to what you see at weddings or large events, of bringing that type of device onto the church property and using that as a bathroom option in the future. I did the research on that, and just to simplify it is that it becomes extremely costly. According to the vendors, and I did 2 of them, it's far cheaper to buy the unit than to rent the unit for 1 year. So, renting it 1 year, you would be paying about the same as buying a unit. And the units, because they're handicap accessible, they are very, very large. So larger than what we would anticipate a standalone building to be. I figured the cost would be about, after all of the figures there, it would be about $80,000 to place the standalone, to place the trailer as our standalone option. And obviously the portable bathroom problem is, though it would give us an immediate bathroom and immediate usage, there's a high price tag to pay for that, and it is very likely it will not meet the criteria of the town or the community of having a portable bathroom parked outside of the church. So it doesn't seem to be an option that can be easily or readily explored. The hows that would come out of that would be a problem. If we move to the lift system, with the lift system, we have a staircase that's been used over the years. If you could hold that for a second, I'll go back to that. On the bathroom, yeah. So let me go through the lift system just because of the order of the slides. Are you okay with that? You have this natural curvature that takes you up to the church. So John Kniff did a little bit of exploration, and he feels that we could utilize that in designing a lift system that takes people up to the top of the hill, so to speak. The architectural costs that are related to this, the lift system, would be about $83,000 to $93,000, comparable to the cost of the bathroom. So we're looking at similar cost of either of them. In Brooklyn, I just happen to have seen one church that has a lift system this way, that takes people up. And there's a platform too that can be used that comes down and then brings people up into the church. That could hypothetically, according to John Kniff, be used in order to navigate up the curvature into the church. And the railing go alongside the existing railing perhaps that we already have. If not, we might have to think of landscaping to hide the railing as you go up the hill. But it's a possibility and it's doable that way. That's there. Now we'll go back to Susan's the question of timeline. The timeline of executing the project is complicated by the number of approvals that have to be given. So these have to be navigated through the town, through the county, and through the state. And each one takes several months. 3 months for the actual construction of a bathroom project after we get health approval. 3 to 4 months to get a variance hearing on either a standalone or an annex with the town. Fire department, not so complicated. Town of Brookhaven, another month. Certificate of occupancy, another month. Variances from the state, about 4 months. And then there's always the question of the state Parks Department of giving its approval for this type of project, which could be several months. So if you take each of the aspects of the projects and put them together, you're talking about ultimately from start to finish, it would take 1.5 to 2 years. If we combine both projects together, file them together, apply them together, it would give us the option of being able to build out with limited funds one aspect of the project and then have the other one ready to go when the money is raised. So the thought is if we file for both, then we have to pay all of the filing fees, all of the monies to do both at the same time. But in the end, we're ready to go. Some people would say, don't waste money filing for a project that you're not going to start right away. Let's use it towards the project at hand. John Kniff feels that the congregation should file for both of the projects at the same time, navigate them completely and get them done and have them both ready to go that way.
Question,
Sure.
in all of this.
No.
Thank you.
It's a blessing and a curse because, it's private property, it's church property and controlled. It gives us control of the property, but it also doesn't give us control over funding and outside funding that might be available. It was a public property. So, the double-edged sword. Susan?
So my question wasn't on the timeline, it was really on the, I totally agree with John, that you should file for both projects, yeah, because you're open. My question was, where is the Bishop's Committee on which option of the bathroom? Because in order to file for something, you need to actually which one you're going to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll skip ahead to answer your question. So I'll go back to this.
What Herb is skipping over, and again, we can sit here and sing his praises for quite some time. He has literally inventoried and addressed every question that he got from members of the community, from members of the Bishop's Committee. Anytime there was a question, Herb inventoried it and found an answer. So what he's skipping over is these answers to very thorny questions that people asked.
Yeah. I'll reveal. I was going to do. Susan's pressing me. Suzanne's pressing me. So I give you whatever you want. The Bishop's Committee looking at the 4 options, immediately felt that the interior option is not one that we want to pursue. There's too much negative consequences of doing something like that, which then leaves what we consider to be 2 viable options: the standalone building or the annex. And of those 2, the preferable one would be the annex that would be attached to the church. with the appropriate soundproofing, exhaust that way. But if that weren't a doable option for whatever reason, the second one would be the standalone building on the property. So that's the consideration that's there. There may be some people that feel, again, the congregation will have to weigh in on it, that the interior option, since it's the simpler one, it's the quicker one, it's the least expensive one, it might be the best one. I would caution on it, because sometimes you'll take the simplest, easiest, and fastest one and find out that it doesn't work. And that brings you right back to square one, where you have to do the outdoor building. So,
So, I think that if you put the file in for the amendment, maybe something comes up with the historic preservation piece, that it could be easily adapted on the same filing for the standalone.
I don't know where he would come down on that. I think that when he determines, here's what the congregants want, and then does that build out, that planning, it'll be based upon what he thinks is a doable option that is credible with the different agencies that can be ushered through. He'll say, in all of these options that we have, the interior and the annex, they're not ADA compliant completely. There just isn't that room to do it. But agencies generally allow on historic buildings a certain amount of wiggle room to do the project that way. So I think in answer to your question, John would say, the options that he's going to plan out is one that is going to be able to be shepherded through the agencies for final approval. I don't think he's going to start a project and then find out it's not going to get approval later down the road.
That is the standalone.
The standalone, I believe, is AD compliant mostly. If you really were truly ADA compliant, from my understanding, you would have both a men's and women's bathroom. That would be completely AD compliant. And you just don't have that ability on this property to do full ADA compliant. And in a sense, for our needs and for our purposes, we need a bathroom, but we don't need that full compliance that is required for new construction.
I have a logistics question about the lift. I am assuming that the person needing the lift will load from the street level. Now, usually a person, if God forbid they're in a wheelchair, because if somebody has a wedding, sometimes they have wheelchair people.
Mhm.
That's a pretty tight area for a person with a wheelchair to navigate, since that curve is so deadly to begin with. Should something, God forbid, happen by some speedster coming by, will the church be held responsible if there's an injury?
It really is a twofold question. The lift system is designed. John Kniff was not able to give us the design of the lift system, because that would require a whole bunch of different schematics, outsourcing some of the different drawings, doing different rendering. So we're talking more or less about the schematic, the general viewpoint of it. It might be that when the lift system is actually plotted out, it would require taking some of the soil or some of the land so that the parking could be safer where the lift system is. So, right now it's very, very tight, very, very difficult.
Because otherwise it would mean the person would have to come with a wheelchair
Yeah.
or on crutches or
Yeah.
whatever from the parking lot area,
Yeah.
down the pathway, across in front of the church,
Right.
where the
road.
speedsters are,
Yeah.
on the road. I mean, it's for able
Yeah.
people, it's tricky
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, some of those details
I
we'll
just-
have to look
yeah.
at, yeah.
That's a big
And it
detail
might
for
be that
sure.
we have to do some landscaping in the front of the
Yeah,
church.
I just don't know to what extent would the church be responsible if, God forbid, something
I'll
happens.
go back to that
Okay,
question.
sure.
I haven't. So, but that's a good, that's a good point. All right, let me go back. Susan, can I move on?
Suzanne?
Suzanne, I keep on saying Susan. Suzanne, can I move on? All right. Grant money for the project doesn't exist because it's a religious structure. It's just not there. And I also explored at a conference on grants, the ability to access monies for accessibility projects with churches. And they admitted there are no existing programs that give grants for accessibility projects. If they were, or they did exist, they'd be glommed up right away because of the number of churches that don't have accessibility. But they're just not out there, like there are for so many other different projects by nonprofits in the community. And particularly the problem is as a religious institution, it doesn't qualify for grants that are given by a lot of foundations or by government agencies.
I would like to accept what you found so far, but to keep an open mind, because before I gleefully handed the baton to Herb, I had asked around, and there did appear to be a couple of different options recommended by Regina Brandow, and I think my niece Ashley, coincidentally, two attorneys, nothing, that there may actually be some, I don't know who they are. Yeah. So I think I would in action, I'd say there's no grant money. When Kara first, we briefed her on the project 3 or 4 years ago, she walked around and implied that she could get us a grant for a septic system. So I would interpret that number one to say they can't do that, but I don't think that would preclude us from there may be some entities out there that give grants.
Grants goes to those structures that are used. And so we found that even though there might have been an avenue that would handle the religious property, when it came to accessibility, we were told that we could compete in places that would win over you because you're not using that.
The conference I attended at the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory that was sponsored by the Gardner Foundation. They did have a number of different agencies, including one that was related to the church or churches. And there was a grant that they said could be available, but I believe the amount of money was about $1,000 that they would give out. So it doesn't go very far. That's there. So if there are grants, you can forward them to me and I can make the inquiries as to their availability. But a lot of times they'll make you, if anybody does grant writing, you know, they make you jump through a large number of hoops, almost sometimes impossible to fill. The paperwork is daunting, and then the reward at the end is so small, you wonder, why am I in this race that way? So, do you have a design system for the lift? I said we don't have the actual design from a company that would come in and plot it out to give you a good view of what it would look like. But the concept is that we follow the natural contours of the existing pathway. And if we were not able to preserve the fence, the Bishops Committee's recommendation is to use that fence in some other project at the church property, not to simply abandon it, and use the wood and the materials for another project that would be lasting. Can the lifts handle a casket? That one we're going to have to ask the lift company when they do the installation that's there. That would be nice to have, but we'd have to find out exactly what the weight system and weight bearing of the lift is, and find out also the amount of an average casket to get it up to the church. It was often a question of locating Suzanne.
Sidewalk so that it's coming behind somebody that's using the lift. Am I waiting for the lift to get up to the church before I can get to the church myself?
I don't have a definite answer to that. That might be, but I don't have it. Without actually bringing in a design team to plot it out with the lift company, it's hard to say. You know, so that's a great question, but, I don't have a definite answer on that.
But that's what you mean by following the same.
You're right,
curvature,
right.
is like actually
Yeah.
like going over
Yes.
the side.
And I could, from, apologies, but I'm utilizing, when we're talking about this whole project, we're doing zero-based budgeting. We're not spending any money on the planning process up to this point. And we're relying upon the goodwill and graces of people that are feeding us information to do it. So we could have very well said to an architect or a planner, you know, here's $10,000, plot us out what you envision and seeing as a lift system. But we're trying to kind of conserve every penny that we have of making the project, saving all of the money for the actual build out that's there, getting the project going. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Locating the bathroom, a lot of older churches have the bathroom in the basement. John Kinniff says there's no chance that you're gonna get approved. Not gonna happen. Zero opportunities for that. Those days are gone. So, and then there's also a number of different obstacles of placing it in this type of church. So he said, sometimes I hate to be harsh. You don't mind, you. Said, let's get on the run. It's just not possible anymore. So if you want to blame anybody, blame Stanford White. He had his chance, right? He had his chance. Do we do a different septic system? Not likely. We're small users, a small congregation. You're not going to get away from the county's requirements for septic system. There might be some systems that are less expensive, but it's got to be a fully functional compliant one. Are there any risks to being not ADA compliant? Remember, I told you we're a little bit smaller on the build outs. John Kinniff says no, they'll make that accommodation for us because of the historical nature of the church. What's the best approach to keep the current fence and install the lift system on one or the other side? That's got to be worked out. So we will try to save the fence as best as possible. Talking about the basement, we couldn't get into the basement. And these are just about the basement. It's just not a viable issue. But that then brings us back to where we started as to what the Bishops Committee recommends. So I'll speak for the Bishops Committee, but any of the Bishops Committee members can jump in and say, modify or edit what I'm going to say. The preferable option, like I had said, is the annex, number one, and the standalone, number two. Franny. The idea of the feeling was as if the annex being incorporated into the church could accommodate existing plumbing, heating, electricity, because it would be onto the church that way. It would also be closer to the church to navigate for somebody that has a disability. It's not so far away in that sense. That was the thinking.
Can I just add, Father Tom, could you share your experience? Remember when we got to this issue, you talked about what happened at St. Luke's with when they, one of the churches you had been when they installed the bathroom, the issues that you had where you had, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you had the people, the noises and the sounds and so forth.
Noise was noise. The annex was used as thermite, where the sacristy itself is baptism. Then with additional installation, the noise issue would be reduced. As far as handling emergency, the accessing the annex would be an easier footprint then accessible to standalone. And what else was said about existing electrical plumbing? That there are things in place that could be utilized rather than.
There's one.
So-
It's outside. It has all the different problems. Being part of the building. So that might be another thing.
Yeah, one more thing I was saying to standalone buildings for everything from the water use to, I mean, it just, it creates a bullseye for. Oh, okay.
So when you say plumbing, I guess septic system, is it in water in this stuff?
Yes.
And you have to flush.
Well, I know, septic system.
That's an outhouse you're describing.
Meaning that we are talking equal amount of in the country, United States, if you tell people what we do highly, they look at you as sad, coming from a different world. Because in most communities, there is a process of a septic system, in which the materials are filtered in a certain way so that the materials are always. We don't do that on home, and we don't do it by having a septic sewer district that filters the process into a plant. The county is trying to move as far as they can to making it so that people get into septic. So there's new systems that are designed for high-tech systems that utilize electricity, helping to process the material so that nothing is released into the ground. There's sophisticated systems that cost $30,000 to $40,000. They're not like the ancestral, where you just drop the materials into the ground and letting the waste matter. We're getting away from that. And it's usually one that is situated away from the bathroom itself. It'll be some different way. There's a number of different, there's 2 or 3 different models that Suffolk County is using. And they also have a grant system. If you do want to replace your successful under certain conditions, there's grant money to help you in that process. You don't get 30 or 40,000. That would be nice if we could.
So that's actually just that really want. So, but, so it's not, there's no connection.
Sewer line? I don't think there's any sewer line to the street, no.
No sewer lines. Someday, they'll they're talking about we're well away from it. But if you go to Newsday every other day, you'll see articles about what people consider to be food systems. You know, destroying things down, affecting our mental thinking. We're one of the few communities in the United States that has we don't pipe it in, we don't have to bring it from anywhere. All we have to do is reach down into the ground, and that's our water. It's becoming more and more polluted. I'll talk from my own point of view. My house I had a well, you know, when I was there in the nineties, we had a well, we drilled it every night, and then, but, that was deemed the winning eventually tested, and wasn't included. So you couldn't drain it. Sorry before, that was like that. There's too much pollutants coming out of the system. So the movement is saying, right, get rid of the cesspools as much as possible. It'll take a little time. Okay? All right, I'll finish up here on these questions. If there were limited funds, what's the most important aspect of the project? This one is a difficult question. A lot of people feel that our services are compromised and that there's no bathroom access, no easy bathroom access. And people feel strongly about that, and they're right. During a service or before service or anything, you have to. That's all. Are one of the bathrooms in the or you have to monitor this. We're going to stay for an hour, we're going to go home. And a lot of people say, what's most important is establishing this system. I know from my point of view, I think I speak to the District Committee, is that the project that we started is an accessibility project. And most people feel, what is the reason why we would have bathroom access if we can't get people to the church? The most important thing is get people to the church. But if we can't get people to the church, what's the good of having a bathroom? The emphasis should be, if we had to decide what gets built out first, it would be the lift system. And then that would be followed by the bathroom. The best scenario that we have, that the Bishops Committee would advocate for, is to have enough funding to do both projects at the same time. Do the planning and the execution, so that at the end of 1.5 to 2 years, both of those projects would be complete. Then we can move on from there. So for accessibility, the lift system first, the bathroom second. Is there agreement about both projects being planned, meaning pay the money for the filing fee, pay the money for the application, separate both projects through the different processes at the same time, and devote to getting them on board and ready to go when the money becomes available? The feeling was yes. That would be the best available option. Keep both projects, do them at the same time. And then the last one is there agreement that we should request in the diocese matching funds? That people in this congregation have worked hard over the years, over 15 years, compiling money, a little bit at a time, dedicated towards this project. Would it be appropriate to ask the diocese to help us fulfill the process? And the feeling was yes on that. So we've moved in that direction.
Can I make a request? So there are other people have fielded questions. Lynn, we're very grateful that you're with us. Did you have any questions you wanted to have addressed? I want you to. No, she says, I'm interpreting her hand signals to be, no, I thank you to be here, but I have nothing else, no questions at this point. If you change your mind, just make a face or something like that. Back to you, Herb.
I have a question. In your own is that your family? Or is it once in a while I realize it's both of our lift system that they're not receptive. My feeling is that door is closed. The door was always closed. The door, and I know it's controversial, but my feeling is that it was not open.
That's been corroborated recently.
This week?
This week, yes, and I'll tell you how. Our next door neighbor, who's become quite a friend of the church, the guy who lives in the Oklahoma bowling house, Charles. Charles does, we were at the yard sale. Charles, one, remember, he helped us set up early. He bought several items, and when he bought items, these things were undervalued like 2 or 3 times as much. And then he came back and helped us clean up. He's on the board of the Wood Melville Heritage. He's a very interesting man. If you ever spoke to him, he's very toy, has the gift of gab. And when I go to open the church in the morning, I think sometimes he looks out his window and makes the TV come. He always comes out and talks. Every morning, this guy talks. So yeah, Charlie. So I spoke to him. I said, look, we're having our press. He saw the sign. It's the sign, it says, the sign for the race says all funds
accessibility project. And I said, Charles, I got to ask you a question. We're getting to the point now where the train has left the station. The Bishops Committee, under Herb's guidance, has considered all the input that's been gathered. And we're at the point now where we're moving ahead. And Gloria has told us that she will not cooperate with us. So do you understand fully, and does she understand fully what that means? That means that we will have some type of mechanical system going up from the front of the church. And if you don't make it available to us to come into the back, then we're going to come from the front. So you're going to be looking at, Gloria's going to be looking at, the whole community is going to be looking at this. So could you go back to Gloria once more and ask her? And he did. And she said no. That was as of this week.
And again, being the eternal optimist that I am, no, I really am I'm always optimistic. And, to a fault, I'm gonna drive my life direction crazy. I always look at the positive, and I want you to consider this, is that we control the direction of the project. Should we have entered into an easement? Have we entered into a agreement? We would forever be at the mercy of what direction another party might want from us. I think when I approached John Kniff and I said, we've looked at the option of trying to get property use, purchase, and stuff like that. From his perspective, he said, you're far better off having control over your own property and using an opportunity to be creative and design it using your own resources. So I think from our perspective, we have to change our mindset in that instead of saying, and we used a lot of time thinking that we would get cooperation or some type of goodwill by the foundation that it was established by a really community philanthropist, Frank and Ward Melville. But the organization, the Ward Melville organization, is, and I think everybody would admit, it's a real estate company. And it's only interested in its own property, protecting its resources, and not reaching out to the rest of the community. Certainly, if that was true, I've said this to you before, they would avail their parking lot to the Old Souls Race Committee. They would have preserved and allowed Pentimento to stand. They would have maintained their control over the Gamecock charges with no beach. They would have, I can go through the whole list of things. But to a degree, I understand what some people say is we're better off doing the project with the resources that we have and letting it unfold that way. If something comes along better, if somewhere along the line it changes, so be it. But in the meantime, I think we have to take the positive outlook that we have a project that we can build out using our own property and control, and be happy about that. Whereas we once thought it was almost impossible to do, I think the Bishops Committee report shows that it's doable that way. Any other questions? Yeah.
Well, so going back to Susan's,
Oh, well, yeah, I don't,
I think right now, get that section crossing wall that goes up our stairs, next door stairs, and connects into the parking lot. That should be off limits parking, so that people have accessibility to get out.
yeah, I think there has to be in the planning process, as the project goes forward, a rethinking as to how people will avail themselves to the lift system to make it safe. On a liability issue, we did talk to, or I did talk to the, by email, the diocese, and they said our insurance coverage would cover any of the issues involving around the lift system. But the architect would have to, we would need the architect to consider relocating the hash marks crossing area, which is a danger. I've always been a danger at this point. So this would be an opportunity in this process to redesign that section of the roadway. Reimagine it that way. So there's another option. Steve?
I just want to comment on the process here, is that, some of the good news about this project is it'll make the community safer if it goes through in this area. Because I think we'll have the opportunity to redesign that area, but also the context that Dan has made previous with Bornwright and Carahan. I think that issue can be mitigated and taken care of and benefit all of us. That's all.
Are there any other questions or comments about the bishop's recommendations? Because the next step would be, if there are contrary opinions and ideas, for the bishop's committee to meet, discuss that input in order to either verify its determination or go off in a different direction. Right now, I haven't heard people say, I disagree, we should go with this option, which is different than what's being recommended. Right?
Well, if you're going to do an annex in the back anyway, you need that framing to do it closer to the front.
You know, I think that will have to be determined by the architect looking at and find those possibilities. I think in the back corner, the advantage there is that it's completely invisible from the road. You wouldn't see any visible sign of it, but it might have to be moved in some way.
Well, I mean, it's all kind of. I mean, it's all kind of options to make less. I think it depends on the historic preservation report and what they might feel that you're protecting the front of it and the entry.
I think the architects have a particular approach. So they often surprise you as to what they can eventually determine as the best alternative. So
To move it forward, move that forward.
it would start to have some issues. So I think that the architect would have to look at the whole layout that's there and see how it will play out. Yes.
I have, I guess, a question still about the lift system.
Sure.
And did John say that like a lift was the best accessibility option that we have? Because I'm thinking about weather and different issues. I know that there's shorter lifts, like this one that just does a couple of stairs and venues that I also kind of volunteer in and stuff. There's always issues. They're not working half the time. There's a lot of maintenance that needs to go into it. And those are indoors, right? And then I'm thinking, for an outdoor lift, did John say that a mechanical lift is still our best option for accessibility?
If I were to address that, I tend to think from the input that we have, that people have handicap needs, a mechanical system is necessary. Because we can't expect that person in a wheelchair or that person that has mobility issues to be able to navigate a less cumbersome, more ADA compliant ramp. It makes it difficult that way. And most people that have some of those greater handicap issues need to rely upon some type of mechanical or vehicle assist to get them to the location that they want.
So is there a difference when you get to talking about an
outdoor lift system as opposed to an indoor lift system. And I'm just wondering if that's like the outdoor one that can deal with the weather and those other issues is factored into the costs, or if the costs are kind of based on like general more indoor use.
That's what I'm hoping around with the lift systems. The companies on Long Island do the exterior systems. They're used to making those type of designs. The actual build out and look would require them to come to the site and plot it out. How much it would look or not look like this is a question. But it would be one that would take you up along the curve path that way. And according to John Kniff, they operate in all weather conditions.
And so
And
the
I'm sure-
costs that you have are based on it.
Yeah, but I'm
Sure.
sure that there are severe weather considerations where it would be less likely to say, let's use the lift system today because of ice or whatever else might be competing with it.
Wouldn't use an weather would not.
Stay home anyway.
Yeah, and I think that the system that we're looking at is one that would be usable 90% of the time. Doesn't mean it will be 100%.
Just, oh, sorry, someone else.
Has John considered the use of the ramp instead of following on the stairs side, to do it on the grass side?
Yes, he has.
He has.
That could be the other, that could be, yeah, he said that there's different considerations. So,
The point I wanted to make is, when we started, we actually had a design from Gloria's architect with a ramp coming in from the back of the church that would be a wheelchair, a ramp for a wheelchair. The problem with that, and this is not my area of expertise, there's a maximum, I don't care what the number is, but there's an angle, maximum angle that it needs to be. And the only way we could achieve that angle would be if we had access to property that we don't own. So the ramp is really not an option. It only would have been an option if we had gotten access to the Ward Melville Association land.
yeah. Those considerations, the community exists because of partnerships that people forge and accommodate each other. And sometimes that doesn't apply. It hasn't occurred to this point. There's nothing to indicate that it will in the future. So we utilized, I always consider time as a thief. It's always there stealing away. And we need to move forward on the project. So we're at that point where if the congregation feels that this is a good direction to take based upon these recommendations, our next steps would be is to eventually approach the diocese for funding and other considerations like the architect that we would have to use or could use, and then begin the process of applying and moving forward. If the diocese were able to do the matching funds, we would have substantially the money to begin the project and see it built out over the years.
People in this town, I don't know if there's water, but they have done a lot of legwork in the area. Herb took to the town. And built on that. And what you see on the screen is only a piece of the print proposal. The next step would indeed be going to the diocese, and Herb's work makes an excellent presentation. And the credibility of the people who have worked with Herb to answer our questions will say to the diocese, we're not just going to the diocese and we want to do things. There's a blueprint to show that a lot of the heavy lifting has already been done in the proposal itself. And even before we could ask for a matching grant from the diocese, we'd have to ask for the diocese approval of the project. And we have slides, we have a presentation in print, and we have Herb to go to the diocese. And that's really good.
I was gonna do the thank you. I would thank, Dan and Sue for all the work they did with the raising of the funds over the years to get us to this particular point. It's a tremendously difficult endeavor to hold a road race. It is not easy to do, considering all the different aspects of planning. I also congratulate the Bishop Committee over the years of supporting the endeavor, and for the congregation to have that outlook to say, here's an impossible task, let's make it possible. Because there aren't that many congregations faced with the dilemma of chapel on the hill, restricted land, no bathroom, all of the, and then say, no, we're going to be able to do this and begin that process to get us to this particular point. So we can almost call it the miracle on the hill. Should we get this lift with some bathroom? No, I'm serious. Because again, most would say it can't be done. This congregation, and again, I always say, like I did at the Dan, I thought I did a pretty good job at the council.
First doesn't suffer from a lack of confidence.
This is the biggest little church on the North Shore, and what it does every week, every month, every year, and it's proving to be able to do this in this project. So you should be congratulated that way. And I give everybody a round of applause and a firecracker.
I think so. I think it's on.
No, you can't sing a song. No, you
To
can't.
dream the impossible dream. Okay. To bear.
Thank you very much. And then the next step is Father Diocese.
Diocese is the next stop.
Diocese is next.
They own the land, and we also want to provide get it to provide some of the funding. So it's interesting, we mentioned the race, and the race, Susan reminds me, and I say it naturally, she doesn't even have to remind me. The race is possible because of the work that Sue and Mary Ellen did years ago. It's only been the last 5 years that we've dedicated all the resources. The money we made on the race used to go to fund our operations. It's only the last 5 years that the money that we have collected has gone to the restoration fund. So if you think about it, if you take the average, some years are more, some years are less. 5 years, $80,000. We've been raising $16,000 a year. So if we do close to that this year, we'll be halfway there.
That's also.
Hmm.
Funding budget, which is inward looking. Funding project, which is community minded and outward looking. Not only are we saying we want to make it possible for more people to get into the church for services, but we do X, Y, Z for the community already. We want more community people to there. It's a historic property that we love, and we want more people to see this historic gem. This is all good stuff in the newspaper. And to do community funding, where we're worried about grants, just the unknown community assets. That we're going to say, look what they're doing. So I think everything's been really good.
Yeah.
Sure.
You earlier.
They could, well, the endowment, so the answer is and you, as we all know, those funds are, if you don't know, that fund started within Mother Ann's estate, originally funded that. I think that's up to like $36,000. We in the past, Franny, have borrowed against that.
Yeah.
So that possibility exists. So the answer is it's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. But when that money was borrowed from the fund, it was paid back.
Right.
Reflection of what Tom says is that the project itself becomes an ambassador to the community as to what we were able to do and what we were able to accomplish. I know I talk from the experience of the Three Hills Community Trust. We tend to be the largest landowner of properties on the North Shore, but we probably have the least amount of funds in order to do that. So we're always struggling along. And recently, the passing of one of our former members that had been a board member they left, in property and funds, about $1 million as a bequeath to keep us moving forward that way. So, there is money that's there and available as your congregation grows and shows its good work. So, don't lose heart.
The story Herb told on Sunday at the concert was the story of Bessie Littell. And those of you, and if there's anyone out there hasn't heard that story, the reason we're here and the reason we have that church is that Bessie Littell left $200,000 to the church back in 1980. In her will. Coins. One last round of applause for her. Okay, Lynn, that concludes the meeting. If you want to say anything, just come off mute. Otherwise, we'll leave you in peace. Okay. Okay, goodbye, everybody. Take care. I'm going to log you out now, Lynn, because I'm going to record this meeting. Okay. Bye-bye.